At 3:42 a.m., my motion-activated doorbell camera sent a notification to my phone. The problem was, I had disabled the notifications weeks ago because the neighborhood cats kept tripping it, and the video feed wasn't showing the porch. It was showing the view from inside my bedroom closet, looking directly at me while I slept. I didn't move. I couldn't. My eyes were locked on the glowing screen of my phone, watching a grainy night vision version of myself lying in bed just 5 feet away. In the video, the closet door was cracked open about 2 inches. A hand, pale, thin, and missing the fingernail on the index finger, was gripping the edge of the wood. My name is Elias. I'm 26, and I work as a freelance night shift dispatcher for a private courier firm. It's the kind of job that requires me to be awake when the rest of the world is silent, sitting in my 1-bedroom apartment with nothing but the hum of my computer and the occasional crackle of the radio to keep me company. I moved into this place in North Denver about 4 months ago. It's an old brick building, the kind with high ceilings, creaky floorboards, and thick layers of beige paint that hide a century of dents and scratches. I like the isolation. Usually, being alone at night feels like owning a secret version of the city. But the silence in an old building isn't really silence. It's a collection of settling wood, humming pipes, and the distant vibration of the radiator. You learn to filter it out. You have to, or you'd never get anything done. The first few weeks were normal. I set up my office in the spare nook off the kitchen, bought a decent coffee maker, and settled into my routine. My only real interaction with the building was the occasional nod to the super, a guy named Miller who looked like he hadn't slept since the 90s. The strangeness didn't start with a bang. It started with the smell. About a month in, I noticed a faint, sweet scent in the hallway near my bedroom. It wasn't unpleasant exactly. It smelled like rotting lilies mixed with expensive floor wax. I figured a neighbor was using some heavy-duty cleaning supplies, or maybe an overactive plug-in air freshener. I ignored it. Then, I started finding things. One morning, after finishing a 12-hour shift, I went to my kitchen to make toast. I found a single, wet copper penny sitting right in the center of my cutting board. I live alone. I don't carry cash, and I certainly don't keep change on the kitchen counters. I stared at it for a long time. I told myself I must have had it in my pocket, set it down, and forgotten. The brain does weird things when you're sleep-deprived. I tossed the penny in the trash and went to bed. 2 nights later, I was sitting at my desk with my headset on, tracking a driver through a snowstorm in Nebraska. It was quiet. Then I heard a soft thwack. I turned around. My closet door, which I always keep shut tight because the sliding track is finicky, was standing wide open. Hanging from the top of the door frame by a piece of black thread was a small, dried bird's wing. I felt a surge of cold air hit the back of my neck. I don't own a cat. I don't go hiking. There was no logical way for a bird's wing to be inside my apartment, let alone tied to my closet door. I took it down with a pair of pliers and threw it down the trash chute in the hallway. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely type. I called Miller, the super, the next morning. "Someone has a key to my place," I told him. I tried to sound firm, but my voice kept cracking. Miller just sighed, leaning against the doorframe of his office. "Look, kid, I'm the only one with a master key, and it stays in the lockbox. You're on the 3rd floor. Unless they're Spider-Man, nobody's coming in the windows. You probably just left the door unlocked. It happens to the best of us at 3 in the morning. The door was locked, Miller, and someone put a bird part in my room." He gave me a look that was half pity, half annoyance. "Maybe you're walking in your sleep. My brother used to do that. Used to rearrange the furniture and wake up in the bathtub. Buy a camera if you're worried." So I did. I bought a cheap, motion-activated doorbell camera and a couple of interior ones. I set the doorbell one up on the front door and put another on the bookshelf facing the living room. I didn't put one in the bedroom because, honestly, I didn't want to see myself sleeping. It felt too vulnerable. For a week, nothing happened. The cameras recorded a lot of dust motes and me walking to the kitchen in my boxers to get water. I started to relax. I felt stupid for being so paranoid. I even thought about taking the cameras down. Then came the glitches. I was reviewing the footage from the previous night while eating lunch. Most of it was boring. But at 4:12 a.m., the living room camera triggered. I watched the video. The room was empty. The motion sensor had gone off, but nothing was moving. I was about to close the app when I noticed the bottom right corner of the frame. The shadow of the armchair was moving. Not because the light was changing. The shadow was detaching itself from the chair. It stretched out across the floor like a dark liquid, creeping toward the hallway that led to my bedroom. It moved with a jerky, unnatural rhythm. As it reached the edge of the carpet, a hand, a physical, three-dimensional hand, reached out from the darkness of the shadow and gripped the doorframe. It stayed there for 10 minutes. Just a hand holding the wood. I stopped breathing. I zoomed in as much as the cheap sensor would allow. That's when I saw it. The index finger was missing the nail. The skin was raw and pink, standing out against the pale, sickly white of the rest of the hand. I didn't go to work that night. I stayed in my living room with every light turned on, a kitchen knife on the coffee table. I didn't see anything. I didn't hear anything, but the smell of lilies and floor wax was so strong it made my eyes water. I spent the next day scouring the apartment. I moved the fridge. I checked behind the stove. I went into the bathroom and looked at the ceiling tiles. Nothing. Finally, I went into my bedroom closet. I pulled out all my suits, my winter coats, and my shoes. Behind a row of boxes filled with old college textbooks, I found it. The back wall of the closet wasn't solid brick like the rest of the building. It was wood paneling, and in the very corner, near the floor, there was a small, circular hole drilled through the wood. It was about the size of a dime. I grabbed a flashlight and peered through. It wasn't a crawl space. It wasn't a vent. It was another room. It was tiny, maybe 4 feet wide and 6 feet long. It looked like an old service shaft or a forgotten linen closet that had been walled off decades ago. But it wasn't empty. In the beam of my flashlight, I saw a small, makeshift cot on the floor. There were dozens of copper pennies scattered around it. On the wall, pinned with sewing needles, were hundreds of photographs. They were all of me. Me coming home from the grocery store. Me taking out the trash. Me sitting at my desk with my headphones on. And most disturbingly, me sleeping. The photos were taken from dozens of different angles, some from places in the apartment where I hadn't even found holes yet. There was a small pile of clothes in the corner. My clothes. A sweater I thought I'd lost a month ago. A pair of gym shorts. A single sock. And then I saw the jar. It was a glass mason jar sitting on a small wooden crate. Inside, floating in some kind of clear liquid, were fingernails. Dozens of them. I backed out of the closet, so fast I tripped over my own feet and hit the bed. My heart was hammering against my teeth. I needed to leave. I needed to call the police. I grabbed my phone, but my fingers were numb. As I scrambled to my feet, I heard a sound. It wasn't coming from the closet. It was coming from inside the walls. A soft, wet dragging sound. It was moving upward, toward the ceiling. I ran to the front door and yanked it open. I didn't even grab my shoes. I sprinted down the hallway, screaming for Miller, screaming for anyone. I burst into the lobby and found Miller sitting behind his desk, looking at a small black and white monitor. "Miller, call 911. There's someone in the walls. There's a room behind my closet." Miller didn't look up. He didn't even blink. He just stared at the screen. "I told you, kid," he whispered. His voice was different. It wasn't grumpy anymore. It was flat, empty. The motion sensors are sensitive. You shouldn't have bought the cameras. I looked at the monitor on his desk. It wasn't the security feed for the lobby. It was a grid of 16 different views. Every single one of them was a bedroom in this building. I saw Mrs. Gable on the 4th floor, reading in bed. I saw the young couple in 2B sleeping soundly. And in the center square, I saw my own bedroom. I saw the closet door slowly creaking open. I saw a figure crawl out. It was a man, but he was so thin his bones looked like they were trying to poke through his skin. He was wearing my missing sweater. He moved on all fours, his limbs bending at angles that didn't seem human. He crawled onto my bed and curled up on the pillow where my head had been just minutes before. He looked directly into the camera, the one I hadn't installed, the one hidden in the smoke detector. He smiled. He didn't have teeth, just smooth pink gums. He raised his hand, the one with the missing fingernail, and waved. I didn't wait for Miller to move. I turned and bolted out the front door, into the freezing Denver night. I ran until my lungs burned, until I found a 24-hour gas station 3 blocks away. I stood there, shivering in my socks, until the police arrived. They went into the building with their guns drawn. They found the room behind my closet. They found the photos, the copper pennies, and the jar of fingernails. They found the secret passages that ran through the entire building, connecting Miller's office to every single apartment. But they didn't find the man, and they didn't find Miller. When the police checked the basement, they found Miller's body. He'd been dead for at least 3 days. He was tucked into a storage crate, his throat cut with surgical precision. He was missing all of his fingernails. The man I had been talking to in the lobby wasn't Miller. He was wearing Miller's clothes. In the dark of the lobby, with my own panic blinding me, I hadn't noticed. I never went back to that apartment. I left everything I owned. My computer, my clothes, my books. I didn't want any of it. I moved to a different state. I live in a modern, glass-walled high-rise now. No brick, no wood paneling, no high ceilings. Everything is bright, open, and visible. I have 12 cameras now. I check them every hour. But 2 weeks ago, I was sitting at my new desk working my shift. I reached for my coffee and felt something hard under the coaster. I lifted it up. There was a single wet copper penny sitting on the glass. And then the familiar cloying scent of lilies and floor wax drifted up from the air conditioning vent. I don't sleep in the dark anymore. I don't even close my eyes for more than a few seconds at a time, because I know he's still out there, moving through the spaces between the walls, collecting pieces of people who don't even know they're being watched. Sometimes, when the wind hits the building just right, I hear a soft, wet dragging sound coming from the ceiling. And I wonder, how many people are watching me right now? How many people are standing just on the other side of a wall you think is solid? If you live in an old building, go to your closet, pull everything out, check the corners, look for the dime-sized holes. Because he's very patient, and he really likes the way you look when you're asleep. The police tell me I'm safe. They tell me there's no way he could have followed me across 3 state lines. They tell me the penny was probably just stuck to the coaster from the moving boxes. But last night, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from a camera I don't own. I opened the link. It was a live stream. The title of the stream was my new address. The video showed a view from underneath my bed, looking up at the slats. A hand reached up, a pale, thin hand with a raw, pink index finger, and began to slowly, methodically, scratch a tally mark into the wood. There were 4 marks already. 1 for every night I've spent in this safe apartment. I'm sitting in the middle of my living room now. The lights are blinding. I have my back against the window, so I can see every door. My phone is in my hand, the screen glowing. The dragging sound is getting louder. It's not in the ceiling anymore. It's right behind me. If you're listening to this, if you're alone right now, just do me a favor. Don't look under the bed, because if you see him, he won't have to wait for you to fall asleep anymore. He's been waiting a long time to finish his collection, and I think he's finally decided that he doesn't want my fingernails. He wants my eyes. I can hear him breathing now. It sounds like someone whistling through a broken reed. The smell of lilies is so thick I can taste it. I'm going to turn around now. I just hope I'm fast enough with the knife. But I know I'm not. He's already reaching for the light switch. If you made it this far, you understand why I don't sleep anymore. Subscribe if you want to hear what happens next, if I'm still here to tell it.